And welcome back to our County Commissioners Forum. I'm Doug Jenkins, and we're joined by Steve Oman, the challenger, Phil Riegel, the incumbent, as we discuss the issues going into the May primary. Second half of our forum will focus fairly exclusively on flood mitigation and the issues there within. Gentlemen, I'll apologize, I forget whose turn it is to answer. Phil, we'll start with you here. We'll start with the general question, then we'll drill down from there. What is the best course of action for flood mitigation at this point in time?
Well, at this point, it's to continue on the path we're on. We're going to do things that we've talked about in terms of cleaning the river as best we possibly can. We're going to continue on that. But we're also going to do things that are important in terms of looking at all the options for the long-term health of the community. And working with the Corps is as frustrating as it gets. I make no apologies for them. They are very frustrating to work with. But at the same time, to come up with long-term solutions to actual flood mitigation type of things, they're the game in town. So we're working with them. We're trying to come up with different solutions. But the other thing I think is important, the county commissioners have asked the Corps to look at all options, not just a couple options, not just preferred options. We've asked for all options, including looking at potential levees in town, potentially widening in areas that might make some sense. All those sorts of things. We're not focused on one particular plan. We want all options evaluated.
Okay, Mr. Oman, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts real quick, and I've said it first, we got to get the river clean first. Commissioner Riegel makes the comments, the most aggressive cleaning we've had in 20 years. That's absolutely not true. I went in office in 1997. Prior to that, Bill Reckers, David Spar, and Virginia Clymer were the commissioners. They had the first project to clean the river. And clean the river, all they're doing is pulling logs out and trees out. $1.4 million was spent there. Approximately that, that's what the number roughly was. The time that we were there, after you'd done that, we came back in and kept it up. We spent roughly $380,000, $400,000 in that area, just following up, keeping doing what we were doing. For some reason, it seemed to die. If you all know, if you've been watching, the agriculture community put a lot of heat on the commissioners to start this project this time. I wrote an editorial for the paper about the flood mitigation and what was going on. I explained every one of them, and I came back and I said, number one, you got to get your infrastructure open. The river is no different than if you've got a drain problem in your house. If your bathtub is drained, you don't tell the plumber to put a new drain in back here. Common sense, you unplug the one you got, and that's the river.
All right.
But
time on that one. We're going to come back to it here in a second. I tell you what, let's follow up. And Steve, I'm going to start with you on this. Let's focus on the Army Corps of Engineers. Do we stay the course with them, in your opinion?
What the Corps is looking at, the part that bothers me, excuse me, the part that bothers me with the Corps, they've been here 6 years. They spent the first $6 million. They got a preliminary report laid on the table. That preliminary report said we're going to go out to the reservoir and lay a levee to 15. We're going to have induced flooding north of there. I'm talking Country Club on out, Blanchard Valley School, that whole area back in there. The next thing they're going to go do is go out and put a levee on Eagle Creek, south of the university, which will just flood from there back to Arlington. The next thing he talked about was running a diversion channel and run it west of town, which, first of all, I've lived there all my life. I know what's there. You got a stone quarry out there. They used to talk about a fault. Well, we finally found out what the fault is. It's in the Tar Box McCall, which is way north of where Eagle Creek is. I got the 62 study out at the farm. People need to come and look. The Corps then knew where the Eagle Creek. They followed everything with the watershed, shot them down through levees. But I have a problem when we're going. They laid $6 million study on the table, and not one, and said you're still going to flood Findlay, and not one county commissioner said, wait a minute, it's time to step back and see where we're going.
So would you cut bait with the Army Corps or no?
I would step up and tell the Army Corps, you're going to do what we're going to do, but we're going to start cleaning the river. The Army Corps does not going to do one thing with the river.
Okay.
They'll tell you that.
Phil, we'll give you a chance to rebut here.
Well, as frustrating it is, I mean, at this point, yes, you continue to move on with the Army Corps. You keep that process going. It's, and I think the thing that is important is the commissioners do stay vocal with the Corps to look at other options. I've on many occasions talked with different Corps officials and said, hey, we need to look at this too. We need to look at this too. We need to look at this too. And some of the things I mentioned earlier. I think those things are important so we do have all the information and we can make informed decisions as a community. So moving forward, reluctantly, obviously, with the Corps, yes, but that's the game in town in terms of potentially looking at long-term solutions. But the commissioners have never said, oh, we're for this plan or for this plan. We want all the information so we can, as a community, have a discussion, say, here's what we can get for this benefit. This is what we can get for this benefit. This is what we can get for this benefit and this cost. And so the community can weigh in on some of those things.
I want to follow up on that point, and we'll go with Phil first, then Steve will have you rebut it as well. What happens if the Army Corps comes back with their plans, hopefully a year from now, and says, but it's cost prohibitive, and we don't know the funding's there? What is the county's course of action then?
Well, then you continue to do some of the things that we've been doing in terms of acquiring properties, working for other solutions that we can do. I think you could still work with the Conservancy District on certain things that maybe there's some things that they could do that could provide some relief in certain areas. So I think you still look at those things because it's obviously important to the community. So we need to have a thorough looking at that. But at the same time, some of the things we've been doing in terms of purchasing houses, working to get some of those highly repetitive loss structures out of the floodplain, that's important too. So we need to continue to do that as well.
Mr. Owen, same to you if the Corps plan would come back.
One of the things that's been most frustrating to me is everything with let's talk about the northwest quarter of the city, Dalzell Ditch. I was a county commissioner when that Dalzell Ditch started. It takes a long time to work a system through government to clean a ditch, especially that one. But the bottom line, we spent about $100,000 on engineering. It went to the public. Commissioner Eagle voted no to kill the project. Dr. Walton voted for it. I've often wondered why would Dr. Walton vote for it and the other two vote against it. It's probably where she comes from. She's got an ag background. Where she lives, she has to drive across the ditch to get out of her property every day. But to turn that project down the way they flood out there, and now we're going to come back and restart it. Now, yeah, you're going to come back. A lot of the engineering's done, but it's going to have to be refreshed. And it was absolutely, if you're interested in drainage, you don't vote no on ditches. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm proud of my record. There hasn't been one ditch I ever voted no on as a county commissioner.
Let's follow up on that. Is that the most responsible use of taxpayer dollars? And how can to do the ditch, or do they all go by the assessment to the property owners?
Ditches in this county are assessment. I mean, every ditch. I mean, if the county commissioners are going to step in and pay for the Dalzell ditch now, there's going to be a lot of other ditches in the county are just supportive of that to a lot of people. So, I mean, history and where we're at, we pay ditches are assessment projects.
Phil, on that?
Well, in this case, the city has said that they're willing to put in some money, so I think that makes a lot more sense. Part of the problem with the Dalzell ditch was a lot of costs for not a lot of benefit. We heard from a lot of people out there, churches, pastors, and those sorts of things, people that said, this is really going to hurt us. And so we took all that into consideration. In fact, I asked to move the table because I wanted some more information, and I couldn't get a second to move the table to get more information on the ditch. I didn't have a chance to pursue some of the things that I thought maybe would make the ditch project a little bit better. And so in that sense, went forward and voted no. But I think in this case, we've got some funding from the city that's going to help reduce those costs to the churches, to the other people up there and then also make the engineering a little better so it does provide more benefit. I think those are all important, and that's why this is a totally different situation than it was before, and why I think this time we're going to get that done.
Okay, let's bring it back, and we'll come back to your point. Question a little bit different for you because you're on opposing sides on this. But Phil, for you, in terms of cleaning out the river and dredging the river, say the EPA no longer effective, they're going to let you do that. Why not, and how do you go about funding that?
Well, if you got approved, then you have to look at a cost-benefit analysis. Does it make sense? What we're doing now makes sense. What we're doing, and my opponent says not the most aggressive it is. I mean, money doesn't have anything to do with being aggressive. What has to do with aggressive is we're doing things like taking the trees and vegetation off the islands that hasn't been done before. We're starting to take out the dead act that hasn't been done before. Those things are more aggressive than the previous project was, and nobody can dispute that. So that's obviously a piece of what we need to continue to do. Now, in terms of a dredging project, the benefit isn't really great on a dredging project. You look at URS, who's a nationally respected and internationally respected engineering firm, has done a model of the river and has said that a dredging project, you remove 1 foot of material, the length and width of the river, you're looking at an 1/8 of an inch benefit on the 100-year flood. we'll be talking about huge costs in terms of probably $60 million in costs in terms of going from DuPont all the way through Hancock County. That's a lot per landowner, probably $1,000 or so. So
Okay. We'll time on that one. Mr. Oman, same question. Let's say the EPA, that's all settled. Obviously, you're in favor of doing the dredging. How would you go about paying for that? Would that be from current mitigation funds or from assessments on landowners along the Blanchard?
First of all, when we talk about flood mitigation, there are 6 counties in our watershed. 5 of the county commissioner boards have chose not to put one dime in what's been going on with the study of the Corps. All the commissioners, I've talked to them, I got friends there, the commissioners have been to our farm. Everybody wants to clean the river. It takes somebody to take ownership to do it. But the problem we have, and Phil talked about it being aggressive, I'm telling you, going in and spending $330,000 on an 88.5 mile, or 338 or whatever the bid was, on 88.5 mile versus over $600,000 for 1.6 miles of a ditch. Doesn't make sense to me. When you spend about $20 a foot studying a river, and you can dip it, you can dip a ditch for $2 a foot. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. He wants to talk about money. Let's talk about money. The Corps has told you the most that you're going to get from D.C. on this project is 65%. You're going to come up with 35% locally. If you use the $200 million figure that they're using right now, we know that's not fair at all or right. But just take that and divide that by the parcels that they've done to get the 330. You're talking people paying $2,000, $3,000 a parcel. Not only in Hancock County, but all the counties.
Okay. Let's move on and talk about future zoning. We addressed this a little bit in the first part, and I believe, Steve, you have the first one on this. How can regulations and zoning be set forward in the future for residential and industrial, both of those, to encourage development in Hancock County, but also avoid future flooding issues?
Well, first of all, you don't build in a floodplain. Number one thing that I would pursue, you asked her, what would you do if they came back and said nothing? First thing I would do would be try to work on the bridges, get the river opened up first, get the things out of the floodway that's stopping it, and go that direction. You cannot sit back and let that river. Everybody says the rivers, they're treating as their enemy. The river is our friend. If we lose that river, you realize what it's going to do to agriculture in this county. You realize what the river will do to Findlay in this county. I can also tell you, if the river is treated like Phil treated at the state of the county, 15 years, we will not have a river. I have driven that river from Findlay to DuPont, from here to Hardin County, and I invite everybody, go to my website, Omen 14, you're going to find 30, 40 pictures of the river. It'll actually show you the condition it's in. We've got to have the river. Don't keep walking away from it and not doing it. Nobody will step up and take charge of it. We've got to do it. We've got another choice. Study is not the answer.
Mr. Regal?
Well, my opponent didn't want to answer the question because when you look at the issues of subdivision regulations, which my opponent never dealt with when he was in office, that was a big problem. When he was in office, the size of the pond to hold the water from the subdivision was a 5-year storm size. The roads could be below flood grade. That's not acceptable. That's why we have issues in Forest Lake. That's why we have issues in Liberty Dole. Why we had issues in the Palms. And one of the first things that I did in office, understanding that, I worked with regional planning to come up with solutions to that problem. So now we have detention pond size for subdivision regulations of a 100-year storm. It's going to it holds a lot more water. And the roads have to be, the crown at least, above flood grade. So we're not just flooding our subdivisions with water and holding it there. We're getting it to a detention pond and holding it so that, and getting it out in a slower pace. That's all very important. And we need to continue to be reasonable and mindful of how we're developing our community, and that's one of the first steps to take.
I'm going to allow a rebuttal and a response. Go ahead.
First of all, the retention, they were 5-year. First of all, they're not 100-year today. You couldn't afford to build for a 100-year event. What started this was a 2007 flood. I lived just south of town. From us where we were at, we went from 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 inches of rain on the south side. Came down through here. There's 2 watersheds in Hancock County. 40% of Hancock County doesn't even go into Blanchard River. When you have that coming to Findlay, if that would have came in spring of the year, you'd have wiped Findlay out. I could probably have 1 in 500-year event. But I'm going to tell you, Doug, When you look at where Findlay lays, you go to Mount Blanchard, it's 86 feet higher than Findlay. There's that much fall. Go to Blanchard Valley Hospital, there's 37 feet fall between Blanchard Valley Hospital and the bridge. From Bigelow out here, it's 37 feet. From Bright Road Bridge out past 139, which is a little over 6 miles, you're talking less than 10 foot of fall. And you got a plugged up river. Now, it goes back to your drain. People, when you got that much water coming, Findlay's in a bowl that's been there forever, and you've got to get your river opened up.
Time on that, your response?
To say that the flooding problem in Hancock County started in 2007 is unbelievable. I mean, the 1981 flood, he had the 5th worst flood in history, and during his office in 97 at the time. We have had a flooding problem here for a long time, and to say that now all of a sudden we didn't know anything about it until 2007, that's not acceptable. So, if you go back and look, as I said, we're trying to improve the situation from where it is now. I wasn't involved in those earlier issues, but we are trying to make progress, and we are making progress. We're going to continue to make progress, and we're not going to say that we didn't know that there was a problem. We know there's a problem. We're trying to fix the problem, and we're going to make a big difference over the next several years.
All right.
I want to run response to that.
Well, we'll get to it. Let's continue moving along. Let's talk about reduction of flood damage, because whether or not we stick with the Army Corps of Engineers or not, whether or not we dredge it or not, we're going to have flooding between now and then, mitigating that immediate threat right now. Steve,
Right
we'll
now,
start with you.
the faster you get on the river and get it opened up, it's the best you can do. Phil made a comment, I made a comment about 2007. We're flooding today with 1.5 inches and 2 inches of rain. Findlay's flooding down here. People, the river's crying, get me open. 1.5 to 2 inch rain in this watershed's nothing. Nothing. Back at Christmas, you call it the Christmas flood, we had 2 3/4 to 3 inches of rain. And what you had a flood. I can tell you, just last night I was talking to an individual that lived along the river. He said 30 years ago we could get a 5-inch rain, and you never know to hit the river. That's the capacity we've lost. That's the velocity we lost. There again, go to my website, look at it. If you don't believe that, you want something, just go out to the 3 Mile Bridge, drive to Riverbend Park. That'll give you an idea what the river looks like, because a lot of it you can't see. But I give you the opportunity to go to the website and look at the pictures. You'll see exactly what's there. Lady Bias looked at them and I've talked to them. They're shocked. I'll be honest with you. When we took our ranger and shot some of the pictures with the farmers, let's go look at the river, I couldn't believe what I seen out there.
Just to pinpoint it, your dredging and cleaning would be your response to best immediate action.
You got to dredge, get the river opened up, then you got to look at the bridge. We got to stop building bridges that are dams. I can take you out there and show you 2 of them, and it just was literally a dam put up.
Okay.
You know why it was? Because we took federal funds to build the bridge. They said you got to go across the river 24/7, 365 days a year.
Okay.
You take government money, that's what you get.
Can you restate?
Phil, to restate the question, what are the best immediate actions that the county can take before anything from the Army Corps can do to mitigate damage from current floods?
Well, mitigate damage is one of the things we've been doing is purchasing some of those repetitive lost homes. You know, look at the Clinton Court area. Look at some of the area there north of the river on Main Street. Good progress. We need to continue that, be even more aggressive than that. We just got a grant to purchase an additional 8 for this year. We're going to continue to do that. Others within our county flood mitigation funds as well. So we're going to keep on that and continue to do that. We're going to continue to work on the river project as best we possibly can. We told Water, said, listen, you're done with this project, you go back, we're going to go back through and get more action. We're going to get more stuff out. We're going to continue to be as diligent on that as we possibly can. And part of that is because the EPA does have power here. They've told us no. They told them no back in the mid-90s to take out the islands. They told us no when we asked again. So we're going to continue to work with what we can under the laws that we have. We're going to do the absolute best. Again, being aggressive is important. And here's another sense of aggressiveness. My opponent, in 8 years in office, only put the $2 maintenance fee on the river one time in 8 years. That's not aggressive.
What's a rebuttal on that? That's on the final comment for Mr. Riggle.
It's pretty simple. We came off of $1.4 million, and we had the money in there. We funded it when it had to be funded, when it needed to be put in. Matter of fact, I raised the question about putting it in. I called another county. He said, "Better look at the balance. We're still okay," and we went with it. But the part that bothers me, there's a lot of things happened. 2012, there was a major windstorm went through Hancock County. I can tell you there's places in the river that the ash trees are dead upside down in the river, and they're still there. But we gotta get them out of there, and nobody's willing to do it. Like I said, the county commissioners never got on this. Everybody knows where the ag community's been on getting that river clean, and finally the heat got put there. You know, it bothers me a lot. I'm sitting there and I'm hearing about we're getting this grant money, and that grant money. You know, President Reagan made a comment, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Look what's happened with the flood mitigation. Well, they came in here and they told you the preliminary, we're going to do what we do this. You're going to flood. People didn't flood are going to flood. And I wonder why people are frustrated. You just looked at the downtown situation, which was kind of interesting to me because I'm out in the county watching when they came out with the Main Street deal. What did people say? Get the river clean. They told the city, but it's the commissioners are in charge of that.
I'll come back to you for a rebuttal on that, and then we'll move on to our next and nearly final question.
We are working as hard as you can. We're working to get those log jams out of the river right now. That's why we started the project back in the beginning of 2013. That's why in 2011, when I went out to Soil and Water and said, you do everything you can to help get this river improved. Not in 2013 after some editorial. In 2011, that was going on. So we've been working on this for several years. It's something that we need to continue to be proactive on. We need to be able to go back time and time and time again and not accept just okay. We want major improvement, and that's what we're working on right now. With this project, we're going to go back with another project, do more ash and anything that's fallen in the meantime. But being aggressive on the river is what this group of commissioners is doing, and we're going to continue to do in the future.
I'll ask both of you this one. In just terms of routine maintenance, because I believe you both agree that things need to be taken out of the river to what degree and what can happen, obviously, in opposition. How do we get on a routine maintenance schedule that is workable and economically feasible? And Philip, we'll start with you.
Well, you work with your soil and water groups to have them, you tell them, listen, you be as aggressive as you can possibly be. Take all the ash trees out. I'm okay with that. Let's take all the dead ash out. We're going to do that. I said, let's get a plan to do that. Every log jam, every leaning tree that looks like it's going to come in, we need to get that out now. We need to be proactive, be doing that. We've been talking with Soil and Water about that. We're working on it. That's part of the plan that we're starting now. We're going to come back again, and as soon as this plan is over, and start working on the next phase. But being aggressive on this river is something that this Board of Commissioners has done, and we're going to continue to do.
Just a quick follow-up. So in terms of funding that, assessments or through the general flood mitigation already taken?
Well, the Hancock County portion will be paid for out of the general fund, of the flood mitigation funding. We're okay with that. We're doing that on this project. We're going to make sure that Hancock County landowners aren't taxed twice on that. But the other counties need to put in some money on that. So they're getting assessed. They're in this case $8. But Hancock County citizens won't be assessed $8. We work with the auditor's office to put those things in place so we can pay for that out of flood mitigation.
Okay. Steve, we'll give you some extra time on this since I went right back to Phil on that, but I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Let's talk about the routine maintenance. How can we better go about that?
Well, number one, maintenance of the river needs to be handled by, in this particular case, it's been the Soil and Water. But I'm going to tell you, the organization that would do a better maintenance in our own soil and water would be our Maumee Conservancy District, which my opponent tried to get us out of that and have our own down here, which after we talked and learned about the Conservancy District, probably over the last 5 years, I have a pretty good relationship with the guy. And the only reason, because I asked questions, if you look at the Little Log Lays River, they went in and they've got a river cleaning project, and they fought the EPA all the way. But he told me how you do it. You go to the meetings, and you take the press along and let them tell you can't do it. It cost them $39 million to clean a 176-mile river. Now, if you think $330,000 or $500,000 is going to do an 88.5-mile river in the shape it is today, there was an attorney in town living on. He wrote a letter to the editor, and I got a kick out of it. He said, "This project is nothing more than putting lipstick on a pig," and he was right. And he is an attorney that lives and watches the river. The experience. The county commissioner seats. And I'm going to say something. I'll probably get criticized, but it's no different than a three-legged milk stool. And when the third leg's missing, it's missing. And right now, we've got no person representing that's dealt with drainage, understands drainage. The biggest part of the watershed is agriculture, and there's not one seat at the table to explain how do we get these things done. If I just sat at the table and the Corps said, "Here's $6 million, you're still going to flood,"
Let's put a cap
asking
on it so I
questions.
can get to the next one here. Let's First of all, I want to go back to
They took the fun out of the first Friday for us. That's what the senators
the
got.
economic. Let's talk to the economic aspect of it and paying for that. In terms of routine maintenance, you'd be talking about would you go from the flood mitigation money already set aside or for the assessments? We've talked a little bit about that.
I'd use flood mitigation money we have now, and I would assess it after that. It's no different. It's been done forever.
Okay.
That's the way you got to do it.
Phil, we'll give you a rebuttal response, then we'll get to our final question.
It's totally untrue that I was pushing to get us out of the conservative district. I never voted for it. I abstained specifically because I said that when we were talking about the sales tax issue for flood mitigation, I said county commissioners shouldn't be involved in that. I'm not going to be involved in it. And I did not vote for that. I abstained, and that's what I thought. In fact, I was out at a meeting in Blanchard Township where my opponent was saying that the county commissioner should be in charge of this instead of the Blanchard River or the Maumee Valley Conservancy District. I've been in favor of handing this power over to the Conservancy District to have them start doing some of this. My opponent actually was against that in 2010, and I believe that that would be a positive thing for the community.
Final response on that, and then
My
next
position
question.
is that flood mitigation should have been at the table of the county commissioners. I'm talking maintenance should be at the Conservancy District. They do it. They know what they're doing. They've got a track record of maintenance. You know, after the judges said, no, you're not going to have your own Conservancy District, there was three former county commissioners and one other person went down and we met with the Conservancy District. Okay, what would you guys do? You know what the first thing they said? We'd go to DuPont and we'd open that river all the way back. And guess what? There's not been one thing done to open that river up. What he's talking about has been going on ever since 1997. There was years it didn't happen after I left, I can guarantee you that. But that's immaterial. That river is choking. When you have an 1.5 inch or 2 inch rain, do what it does to the Blanchard River, it's screaming, we got to get clean. And what are we doing? We're sitting around looking about, we're going to do it. We got to do it aggressive. We got to talk to the EPA, we got to talk to the Corps, we got to get the permits, we got to do what we got to do. If we don't open that river up, agriculture needs it, the city of Findlay needs it, and if we lose the battle of the river, economic development, everything else will go right with it.
Okay. Final question. Maybe we may have some follow-up. Let's talk about talking to the Corps. Obviously, last week that became another dust-up. How can the county work with the Corps to get them to be a better partner? Can we get them to communicate better with us, and how can the commissioners facilitate that? Steve, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I haven't had the opportunity to set the table to deal with the Corps. But I will tell you, I've learned a lot of things through the Corps. I happen to be president of the Homeowners Association outside of Hancock County up at Fort Clinton. We have to deal with the Corps all the time. As a matter of fact, Mike Panuski told me who I had to deal with in this situation. I have to deal with the EPA up there because of some environmental issues with the complex. But the bottom line, these people put their pants on the same way we do. Just set them down and talk to them. Mike Panuski's been out to the farm to meetings. He comes out and talks to us. And I really like the guy. I mean, he sits down, he sat there one day and he said, when you look at the watershed, Findlay's in the bowl, you guys tell us what happens. It's pretty evident. A lot of agriculture deals with that every day. I mean, we know how to get rid of water and we know what we got to do it. And it's just frustrating for me to sit back and see $9 million going to be allocated to flood mitigation and not one of them is going to be spent on the river. That's a criminal. That's a crime.
Mr. Ringel, ways to get the Army Corps to communicate better with Hancock County.
Well, you just keep engaging them. You keep talking. You look at for example, one thing, looking at the schedule they put up. You look for ways to make it faster. You know, you try to propose solutions. That's one thing we've tried to do. We're going to continue to work at it. It's a behemoth. It's obviously very frustrating to deal with, but you keep your nose to the grindstone. You don't just take your ball and go home. So that's what we continue to do. Now, in terms of cost, we have, the county has spent about $2.8 million between 2009 and 2013 on studies with either URS or Corps of Engineers. $1.8 million of that was reimbursed from the city. So we've spent about $1 million in terms of from county flood mitigation dollars, in terms of for studies or with the URS or the Corps. So, we've got to continue to be diligent with them. We need to continue to be close with our money on them, but also help make sure that they understand that this is not acceptable, and we need to keep moving forward.
All right, thank you. That will bring us to the end of the question and answer session. We'll go to our closing statements, and Phil Regal will have the floor for his closing statement. We'll start now.
When I go home at night, and many times it gets pretty late, the first thing I do is hug my girls and give them kisses and talk to Justin and Tracy, say how their day was. I'm not in this to be a great politician or to get a bunch of attaboys or from buddies. I'm running for this office because I want Justin, Grace, and Leah to have greater opportunities than I did in my generation. To move our community forward takes a whole lot of effort from a whole lot of people. Over these past 8 years, I have worked to be one of those people trying to make our community better. I've never used the office for personal gain, and I've never used the office to give a sweetheart deal to a buddy. You know, Ronald Reagan used to ask people when he was running for office if they're better off today than they were 4 years ago. And I think that's appropriate in this race. Is our community better off today than it was 4 years ago or 10 years ago? I submit it's not only better, but that amazing progress is being made. We've created 1,855 jobs in Hancock County since 2011, and we have projects in the pipeline right now that are coming this year that will increase that tremendously. Our private and public sectors are working together. We put $1 million in a rainy day fund to help county government deal with difficult financial times. We've begun to deal with major infrastructure and building projects that have given the county stability in office space for the first time in many years. I continue working with officials to keep our costs in check, helping us to keep the lowest sales tax rate in Northwest Ohio. And we have worked to settle differences in a collegial way on a myriad of fronts, one of which is the health department talks that I've been heavily involved in. We now have our best chance we've ever had to come up with a positive result, and I believe we will this year. And while we're all very frustrated with the Corps of Engineers on multiple fronts, we do have full funding from Congress to allow us to finish the study and allow the community to look at all options so we can make informed decisions together. Thinking back to 2010 or 2004, those are major accomplishments. Our community is making great strides, amazing progress, and I ask for your support and your vote May 6th to continue to help Hancock County be a better place. Thank you for your time. May God bless you, and I pray you have a very happy Easter.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. Owen, your finishing statements.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I said when I started why I'm running for the seat. It's called the Blanchard River. Nobody's taken ownership of it. Yes, I got a personal interest in the ownership of getting that river opened up just because it's bad as what agriculture needs it. The city of Findlay needs it just as bad. I've got a son that's in business with me, and he needs it. I've got grandkids that's going to hopefully take over the operation. They're going to need it. I had an individual ask me one time, Steve, why are you wanting to put up with the aggravation of this? It's because I have seen nobody step up and do anything that's going to make a difference with the Blanchard River. You know, my opponent's pretty good at talking the talk. Well, let's talk about walking the walk. I mean, all at once we're going to do this. The things he's talking about in the river, it's not been done. Go look at it. It's been there. Now we got a program that's going to drag stuff up on the bank, and the first major flood that comes, and matter of fact, you get them if you get a 3-inch rain anymore, you got a flood. Here it comes right back in the river. We farm along the river. They had a grant. They had people out picking up and cutting things up. And guess what? We had rain, and out in the field they go, or right down in the islands that we got. But if we don't have anybody that understands it, if they want to continue to study, you know, the accountability. He talked about the accountability of money. A lot of people have talked. Myself have talked. I asked, what's the accountability? What are we getting for $6 million or $9 million? If you do it, what do you think? You'd fill this room with papers and everything else for $9 million? And what have we got? We came back with a preliminary report, and I'll guarantee you, I've been in business long enough that the preliminary report, the big report, will be a lot worse than the preliminary report, and you're still going to flood. And they told you you're still going to flood. And yet nobody wants to step up and get the river. That's your outlet. It's no different than draining your house. We've got to have it. Quit making the Blanchard River your enemy. It's our friend. We've got to have it. If you didn't have it, what would we be here? And eventually that's what you're going to have. The Corps told you, we'll go ahead and run water all over. But it doesn't solve the flooding problem. It may spread the flooding problem. It's a little like the president we got today. He campaigned that he's going to spread the wealth, and he spread the wealth. Now we're going to spread the water.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you both for attending today. Audience members, thank you for attending as well. And thank you for tuning in at home.